Welcome to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Here's your hosts, Matt Cook and Bobby Brown. Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 22 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. My name is Matt Cook. I'm here with my co-host, Bobby Brown, who is on the PGA Tour as a caddy. He caddies for Troy Merritt. If you've been living in a cave or under a rock throughout our episodes that we've been doing together, but this episode in particular, Bobby, we're going to be diving in to not only some difficult topics, but also some topics that are really kind of polarizing right now. It is becoming a very polarizing space, this golf battle. So we'll definitely touch upon some of the LIV Golf versus the PGA Tour, the lawsuit, the latest, some of the changes that are going to be coming up with formatting and so forth. But before we get down into the nitty gritty on LIV Golf and the PGA Tour and this battle that's going on, and really getting some insights from you as well as kind of going over our opinions, also want to dive into the Caddie breakup. I mean, there's so much news going on right now in golf that we really had to sit down, the two of us, and cover a lot of this. So what's up with these late season Caddie shakeups? And then also, go ahead, jump in.
Oh, no. I thought you were getting to that, but
well, then also I want to start off with the Wyndham recap and get us started there, because last week a lot of stuff happened.
Yeah, it was a good week to be Korean on the PGA Tour in Greensboro, that's for sure. I had some relatives in town for the week, but I got plenty. I watch it all the time, and I was watching it. It's funny, after Thursday's leaderboard, I turned to Lori and I'm like, Koreans winning this week. I can tell you that much right now. As there was 4 of them on top of the leaderboard, of course. Tom, he's the only one that goes by Tom of all the Koreans. He's Korean, but I've got to know him pretty well, over the last year or two, hanging out with the Koreans and doing practice rounds and stuff like that. He was actually born in Korea, but he was actually raised in Australia, right? That's where the great English comes from. Yeah. So it's got to be nice for his caddy to be able to communicate that way, because it's tough communicating with the other Koreans, whether it's just general information about the shot or, trying to change the vibe or something like that, because they run hot. But man, what a performance about this kid. Let me tell you a little bit something about this kid. Is obviously I know, all the Koreans, and I'm very well connected. And if there's a caddy change or something's going on, I have a gentleman from San Diego, Encinitas, California, named Rambert Sim, who calls me and tells me. And basically what Rambert Sim does is he's a very successful guy in his own right. So when these Koreans are young, let's say in their teenagers, and they're going to be superstars, or the parents are going to be superstars, or they've proven themselves already, they send these kids over to, because they're still kids, and they send these kids over to Rambert to live with Rambert. He gets them a phone, he opens them up a bank account, he'll randomly caddy for them, drive them around to different tournaments and that kind of stuff. Teach him a little bit of English. He's basically like a house dad, right? They move in with him, and then as their career blossoms, or they start making some money, or their parents aren't here yet, then they go their separate ways. But I can tell you that 4 years ago, right when Sungjae was starting, I believe Tom must have been 16 or 17 at this time, and we were talking about Sungjae, and he told me, he's like, man, there's one that's going to be as good as Sungjae, right? And he started telling me about Tom Kim. So I got teed off to him, way back when, and the last couple CJ Cups, played practice rounds with him and that kind of stuff. And he's super impressive. He's super straight. I can tell you that he putts the shit out of it. He chips great, which all Koreans are fantastic chippers around the greens. And his iron game is solid. And I'm just wondering, is he going to be a little bit better than Sungjae? Who knows? It's too early to tell. Obviously, Sungjae's pretty established out here. But we played with him Saturday at 3M in Minnesota. And Koreans, for the most part, are very rhythmic with their swings, with their action. They pretty much hit straight shots. They don't curve anything, or, they don't try and get it a right flag with a cut. Well, some of them do, or they don't try and get it a left flag with a draw. But what impressed me most about this young man, other than his excellent English, was that at left pins, he was drawing them into left pins, right? And back pins, he was cutting them in back right pins or front right pins. He was just hitting the proper shape. And I don't want to say he reminded me of Tiger because he didn't. But just his shot making ability was so impressive to me on Saturday. And Troy played a lot. Troy played a lot with Sungjae's rookie year. And when we finished the round, Troy said, not sure if he's as good as Sungjae yet, but I think he is going to be as good as Sungjae. And I think maybe Troy might even change his mind after that dominating performance, especially the whole golf world knows he started off. He got caught in no man's land there on number one and made the quad and to battle back. I mean, the guy should have won by 8 or 9 strokes. I mean, fact is, he made over 400 feet with the putts, right? So that kind of helps, and you're probably going to win.
It sure does.
When something like that happens. But the reason why I said that to Lori about a Korean winning is because the deal with that Greensboro tournament is it's very hot, and it's Bermuda, and it's very grainy, and those are elements that they've grown up in playing their whole lives on the Japanese tour, the Asian tour, or the Korean tour. So they have tons of experience, and it's no surprise that Siwoo's tried to win it a couple times. I believe he got beat in the 6-man playoff. I worked for him one year where he was very much in contention. 2 years ago, when I left him, Brian Branch was caddying for him, and I'm going to say on number 10, 11, 12, 13. 13's a par 4 where you basically hit a 4-iron, right? You're hitting a 235-yard shot, maybe 245 max, and then there's a creek runs through, and then the cover all the way over it's coverable at 275 or 280, but the secondary fairway is a big pitch right to left, right? There's no room to really land a ball. And I know that Siwoo that one year on Sunday when he was maybe a shot in front or 2 shots in front, just naturally Siwoo pulls out driver, and Brian's like, man, where are you going with this? And he goes, oh, I cover creek, bro, no problem. And Brian's like, man, you're going to hit it in left rough, even if you hit a perfect shot. So anyways, he made a big number there and probably blew a chance of winning. But man, this kid is impressive, and I would just bet everything right now that he's solidified a position on Trevor's President's Cup team coming up here in the second week of September or something like that. Right after, yeah. I believe it's the week after Napa, if I'm not mistaken. But the sky's the limit for this kid. He has a good caddy on the bag. Jacob Fleck is his name. He's younger. He's 26 or 27, and when you get paired with new caddies as a veteran caddy, you kind of scope them out, listen to what they're saying. And he made some good calls for this kid on the wind in Minnesota the day we were paired with him. And man, the sky's the limit, for this kid. He looks so impressive. And I hate to say it, but I got the vibe from him that he's like not your total Korean spastic when a mistake's made, obviously by bouncing back with the quad and that kind of stuff. And I just think that is going to put him maybe a little bit above the rest of the Koreans because they kind of run hot, man, and they lose their shit quite a bit, and they don't. And him speaking English is probably a good thing for his caddy because when all hell's breaking loose, that's when a caddy's got to get in there and basically be in a polite way. Hey man, you're not doing this any good right now. Let that shot go or let that putt go, and let's focus on to the next one. So yeah, it was a great Wyndham tournament. Other than him, it was a stacked leaderboard as they always are, and sky's the limit for him.
I mean, the kid is a Sunday, like, he just turns it on, and it's so impressive.
He's so mature too, with the body language and the strut and everything like that.
He is. He gets in the zone, and he's got that he's got that moxie to him, right? Because we saw it at the Genesis over in Scotland. He did that on Sunday and just came up short because he didn't play as good over the other 3 days. Same thing happens at 3M, and then all of a sudden get into this tournament, and he had played well enough during the 3 days to where all of a sudden he goes Yahtzee on Sunday, shoots the 61. But the one thing that I noticed with this kid is that when he gets locked in, it's not like some of these other guys on tour to where all of a sudden it's like you'll still see some bad shots creep in as they're playing really well coming down the stretch just because there's a lot of pressure. This kid, as soon as he gets locked in, he doesn't miss. And that's what I felt was so impressive.
And don't forget on Sunday, Sunday at Detroit, he shot the course record. Remember, he shot 63 Sunday at Detroit. So he's obviously playing the best golf of his life right now. I will say this: he doesn't hit it very far. That's the deal with him. Troy's not very long. He's average long, but he's a little shorter than Troy, so he's hitting longer clubs in. So let's say he's playing the best golf of his life right now for sure. Yeah. And But I think when you start moving to Torrey Pines South or something like that, where it's 73, 7,400 yards
He gets stretched out.
at sea level, he gets stressed out. He I wouldn't say he's a horses for courses guy, but the 3M, Greensboro, Detroit, those are kind of courses that are right up a player like right up their alley. So if you put him at Bethpage, he's probably going to struggle a little too. When you get to these super bomber courses, I do think that this week's going to be a good week for him here for the first FedEx Cup event at TPC Southwind because you got to hit it straight here. It's once again, it's hot as can be here. I mean, it's like brutal caddy dropping weather. Super grainy Bermuda greens. This year, I noticed there's not a lot of rough as there has been in the past after being here for a couple of days and a couple of practice rounds. But still, you can get in some spots where you're gambling on jumpers. This place is notorious for flyers, so let's talk about flyers. They're such a gamble, and it's so stressful for a caddy too if you don't really have an experience. It's true. If you don't have an experienced player, you're basically guessing, and you're protecting, right? A certain club fits to a certain yardage, but you're like, man, if this thing comes out and you're screaming, long's no good and that kind of stuff. So if you guess right, you look like a genius. And if you guess wrong with experience, you're probably going to be okay because if anything else, it's going to come out a little slow. And 9 out of 10 golf courses you can really play above the hole, right? Especially on the PGA Tour. I mean below the hole.
Below the hole. Right? I knew what you meant.
Below
I'm glad you corrected it though, because the audience might not have, and then you would have gotten all the criticism coming at you. Bobby doesn't know what the hell he's doing out there.
Of course not. That's why I'm a caddy. I'm not a player. Jeez,
now, do you know why he's named Tom? Did you hear this story?
Thomas the Train or Thomas the Tank?
He's got an obsession or an infatuation with Thomas the Train. He kind of does.
He looks like one. He's got to be all of 5'5". I'm guessing he's like 5'6" or 5'7".
Is he that short?
Yeah, he's super short.
I didn't realize.
He's built like Sungjae. I wouldn't say, he would never hear this, but he's got a little bit of a pudgy belly and everything like that, and he hasn't really got a lot of muscle to him, and he's just really good. Hey, Korean golf right now, man. You got this kid, you got Sungjae, you got Siwoo, you got KH Lee. The others. There's not too many others. Kang, he's been off form for 2 or 3 years now, but you could potentially, if Siwoo does something in these playoffs, and I'm assuming that's no other international guys are leaving for LIV that would be on that team because. We'll talk about it later, but what I've heard about these other guys that are leaving, they're all going to go after the President's Cup or maybe, after the President's Cup. So that's the rumor around the campfire. But this golf course here that we're playing this week, super, super excited to be here, man. It's the real deal, man. It's a good golf course. It tests you.
I got 11 behind me.
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah, I noticed that. It's a great hole. These par threes here are tough. A few of them have what, you're carrying water, or there's water on the right, or there's water on the left, and you really have to be precise on where you're landing it. It was playing soft the last couple of mornings, and then now we just had a brutal, nasty storm that rolled through a couple of hours ago, and I mean, like, almost shut the whole city down. Nobody could drive or anything like that. So I assume it's going to be super soft out there, which is probably going to help a bomber a little bit. Dustin, I've had good luck here. Dustin won here in 2011, right off of his 60-day jet ski accident, and Troy's actually finished second here before, and he's had a couple other top tens, and Troy took the week off last week after a good couple of weeks of really great Detroit. So I look for a showing out of my guy. We're 64 on the FedEx Cup list. There was a time when I've had players before, and obviously we all know that the top 70 advance to next week. So I've had players in that position before where I would get all worked up that week and I would pull up the mathematics, like what do we have to do? Where do we have to finish? But now as I get older, I'm more like, fuck it. You put the first one in the fairway and you just play golf and let the cards fall where they fall. So should be pretty exciting this week, I would imagine.
Well, now let's head right into the late season caddy shakeup. I mean, my goodness gracious, Bobby. Is this normal? Because I haven't followed like the caddy relationships like we have since you coming on board and us having other caddies on. The late season shakeup, like this would be like a manager getting fired right before the playoffs. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense
Yeah.
in my opinion. But like, clue us in here. I'm just as clueless as probably
Oh,
our audience when
okay.
it comes to
So
this.
yeah, this is not to answer your question. This is not normal. You know what I mean? There's always moving and shaking going. Every week you see a different person on a different bag, or you hear rumblings of something that's going to happen. But you know, the Zalatoris thing, you know, really caught me off guard. It's so funny when it happened. I want to say it was Saturday morning, and my phone starts blowing up. At first, it was my son on the Corn Ferry Tour, right? And I had no idea this happened. He's like, "Is it true that Ryan's out?" And I'm really good friends with Ryan Goebel.
Yeah.
So Ryan Goebel's history is he's a great caddy, number one. I'm going to say that they did fantastic together. So his history with golf is he was an assistant golf coach at UCLA for quite a while, I believe under O.D. Vincent, who was kind of a legendary coach. And he had a player there named John Merritt from Long Beach. It was kind of that Jamie Mulligan posse. Jamie now, you know, has Cantlay, the Porter sisters, Molinari, you know, quite a few players, Luke List. But he originally started Jamie with these, you know, Peter Tomasulu, John Merrick, and John Mellinger. So he comes to work for Merrick, and, you know, one of UCLA's home courses was Riviera, and Merrick ends up winning at Riviera. They don't last together maybe more than 4 years, and John moved to Dallas and is, you know, from California. I'm not saying that's a reason, and his game just didn't continue on for whatever reason. So let me say this. So John Merrick's agent is a gentleman named Alan Hobbs, who works for Lynn Roach's group. Roach's group has like the Hosses and Fred Couple. It's a pretty established agent out here, and they have Zalatoris. Ryan Ryan got the phone call, you know, and he's like, "Hey, would you consider going back down to work for this Will Zalatoris? He's going to come back up." So he went down. I'm sure it was 2 seasons he worked for him on the Cornberry Tour and worked their way up. And I think they were together 4 or 5 years. But anyway, so my phone's blowing up and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty close with Ryan. I'm like, I couldn't take it after an hour, right? I got to text Ryan. I go, "Hey, Ryan, here's the deal." And I got a thought in the back of my mind because there's another great Korean, Sung Yong Kim, who's 9 on the Corn Ferry Tour money list. And I've been in this position before where you lose a big time bag, obviously. And the first tendency is to play woe is me, right? And you sit around and you're like, "Man, how did this happen? We were doing great together, blah, blah, blah. Fuck it, you know, I got some money. I'm just going to chill for a while." But that's not the way to do it. You want to get right back in the game. You know, you want to get seen again. You want people to know, because it doesn't take but 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, no matter who you are. You know, the players forget about you. It's the old out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
So I told Ryan, and I've been on a caddy hunt for this gentleman. Gosh, I hope Kim's caddy that's working for him on the Corn Ferry Tour doesn't hear this. He probably won't, because he's getting the axe pretty soon. And so I told him, I'm like, "Hey man, I don't know where you're at. If you need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you. I've been through it before, but you know, if you want to get right back in the game, I got an option." And he called me back like 5 minutes later, and I'm like, "Okay, first of all, what the hell happened?"
Yeah.
And he just told me, he's like, "Man, things haven't been the same the last 3 or 4 weeks. You know, our communication on the golf course." He's like, "I could sense there was tension, something was going on." He told me, at first I thought maybe he was having issues at home with his family or something like that. And then he's saying it got really bad at Detroit, where they weren't really communicating at all. And he's like, "I just had," as a caddy, you get these feelings. You know, it's just a fact. It's an instinct. It's a feeling, whatever you call it. But you just know when it's coming. So I'm like, he's like, "Man, I knew it was coming." And I go, "So what's the deal with it coming after 2 rounds? That I don't understand." That just and I know Will very good. Will is very good friends with Davis Riley, who my son worked for 2 years. So my son hung out with Will for quite a bit, and they're like buddies. You know, there's so much buddies that he calls me Dad Bob. When I see Will, he calls me Dad Bob. He's like, "Hey, Dad Bob," and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're the son I never had. I wish you were my son. You could retire right now and live off of you." And so I go, "What's the deal with him letting you go?" And he goes, "Honestly, I think the deal on that, letting me go after Friday, was he finished, you know, there were so many delays because of the weather last week." And he said, "I think Will really thought that we had to come back out and play on Saturday, and he thought he was going to miss the cut. He didn't think he was going to miss the cut. So I felt like he had to get it over with at that moment." So Will just told him, "Hey man, I love you to death. We had a good run." I should back up and say that Ryan did mention to me, he's like, "I think the pressure of him not winning and being in the mix in all these majors was starting to to get to him a little bit. So Will just told him, hey man, I got to change it up. I got to do what's best for my career. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and let's part as friends. And there you have it. And now I think Ryan is taking a month off, and then it's possible he's going to show up on that bag I was talking about at Napa. Well, I'll put it this way: that job is his if he wants it. That's for sure. So it's just one of those shitty deals, man. If I've never walked a day in Will Zalatoris's shoes. This is all coming from Ryan. I would never ask Will. I would never ask Will what the deal is and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure his coach. I talked to his coach today, and I will tell you something about this, because you remember you were texting me. You're like, man, are you getting the Zalatoris back? Let me tell you one thing about those big players like that. That's not a job that you go get. That's a job that comes to you.
Yeah, exactly. You get the call. And
And
just to clarify, I asked, did you get a call for Zalatoris?
No.
And then you remember what I told you after that. I was like, that would be one of the smartest decisions he could make.
Well, I mean, you're pro Bobby Brown, and I certainly appreciate that. But there's 50 Bobby Browns out here, that can be confident and get the job done and have the experience and that kind of stuff. But
I just see his personality though meshing well with yours. That's where I get it.
I got it. God didn't give me a lot in this world, but I can yuck it up with it. And, I can yuck it up with anyone. That's for sure. I'm a people person. What do you want me to say?
You are.
I found my niche late in life, and I was just very blessed / lucky to end up where I am. But my heart goes out to Ryan. I mean, it's a tough deal. There's a rumor going around. I shouldn't say a rumor. I know it's a fact, but Will with this special temporary membership missed the playoffs last year. So I am under the understanding that he cut Ryan off a huge severance check, and I mean like I got $100,000 from Dustin and severance check and a non-disclosure agreement. Shocking. But, I think Will really, really took good care of him. And he's a single guy with no family and no kids. And I look for him to, he likes chicks. And knowing him, he's probably down in Mayakoba area, sitting on the beach for a couple of weeks and refocusing. And his bank account's not going to get any lower. I mean, he probably made $1 million with, he probably made close to $1 million or whatever, with everything included. So he'll be just fine. It just sucks the timing. Troy's the first one that when Troy heard the same thing too, he's like, man, really? You're gonna do that right before the playoffs? You're not even gonna give your guy the playoffs? So maybe there's another side of the story too, because I've been in the position before. Well, I shouldn't say I've been in the position, but I've seen guys with successful young players up and coming, and you just think your player's so good that maybe you don't have to work as hard. You know what I mean? You're not going to watch the golf course on Monday. We have plenty of unmarked sprinkler heads out there that you really have to pay attention to early in the week and make sure you get the right head. And this is just a theory of mine. This could be something that possibly happened. So maybe from Will's point of view, that had something to do with it too. But he'll be fine. Ryan will be fine. Will will be fine. I was talking to Will's coach today, Josh Gregory, and I'm like, how many text messages you get? He goes, yeah, about 97 of them. He goes, and they're all horrible. I go, what? They're horrible caddies? He goes, no, they're horrible texts. They're shitting all over Ryan, saying how much of a better caddy they are, which is just so cutthroat bullshitty out here. But it's no surprise the way things go with certain caddies out here, and it's disappointing to hear. I was just so lucky early with Dustin and all my other guys that I never really had to worry about backstabbers and that kind of stuff. But, I've seen it happen to my son a couple times, so I know it exists. So
it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Hey, man, it's a dog-eat-dog world, that's for sure. I should back you up. So he's got a caddy coming in that I'm good friends with. His name is Joel Stock. He's a good player at Oregon, a really good player at Oregon.
Is he the interim caddy?
Well, I'm going to get to that. I mean, we shall see, for sure. So Joel Stock. So this whole they go. It's like dead presidents, right? Or airplane crashes. They go in threes, right? So Joel Stock worked for Ben Crane forever, and you got to be a good caddy to work for Ben Crane, because there's a lot going on. They had some wins together, and then he was kind of floating around, didn't really settle down with anybody solid, and then he linked up with Cameron Tringali. I'm going to say maybe a couple years ago, right? And Cameron was ranked I'm going somewhere with this, was ranked at probably 126 to 132 in the world, and he's gotten to 51 or 52. But he told me in Detroit, we're sitting down having lunch, he goes, this is my last week of camp. And I go, really? Where are you going? What are you doing? He goes, oh no, it wasn't my decision. It was his decision. And I go, wow, Cam's a SoCal guy. And he's like, man, he's changed. He's got thinks he's hot shit, 52 in the world, and that kind of stuff. And Joel wasn't too bent about it. Where I'm going with this is that I was trying to maneuver Joel Stock into this Korean on the Corn Ferry Tour. Okay. But Russell Henley recently fired, man, it goes in fours. Russell Henley recently fired Todd Jesvold. So, and Lanto Griffin's getting back surgery. So, to make a long story short, Lanto Griffin's caddy, Andy Sanders, goes to Henley, who plays great in Detroit. But Henley wants to try 2 or 3 guys. And then Henley plays great again at Greensboro. Well, Joel thought he was going to get a little tryout with Henley. So I'm like, hey, listen, if that doesn't happen, would you consider going to these Corn Ferry Tour playoffs? It's no money. It's $1,300 a week. It's 10 and 7%. But I'm telling you right now, I've seen this guy play enough that he's going to make $2 million a year on the PGA Tour. He's probably going to win a few times on the PGA Tour, and everything's going to be good. But with that, Joel, you have back problems. You're getting older. You're standing on your feet with the Koreans for 10 to 12 hours a day, and it's relentless. It's relentless hard work. So he's like, let me think about it, right? So it turns out that Joel, when the Zalatoris thing goes down, somebody reaches out to Joel, or Joel reaches out to them, and they need somebody fast, right? Because Josh's coach I was talking about, caddy for him over the weekend at Greensboro, and Josh is a great coach, but he's not a caddy, right? He's just not a caddy. There's a big difference. I'm not an instructor. Bones is not an instructor. Lagava's not an instructor. We're caddies. That's our specialty, and coaches have their specialty. So I just think that it's just so weird that, that things just fall into place, and things happen so fast out here. You don't blink an eye. So it's fact that Joel Stock's going to caddy for him in the playoffs, and they're going to see how things go. So this morning we're playing a practice round, right? And there's a guy named Jules that's caddies for Trey Mullinax, and he's walking around with, his name's Ben. I think his last name's Sherman. I'm not sure what his last name is. I always say Ben Sherman because of those that clothing company. I don't know if you remember it, Ben Sherman. And he's the Cobra rep, right? He's the Cobra rep out here that would randomly come in when DeChambeau got in a fight with Tim or whatever. He knows his stuff. So he's walking around, and he's in shorts, right? And reps don't wear shorts. So I'm like, yo, B, what are you doing out here? And he's like, oh, I got a 1-week gig or something like that. And I'm like, really? Who are you caddying for? And he's like, oh, Ricky. And I'm like, what the fuck? What? He goes, yeah, I'm caddying for Ricky. And when the Zalatoris thing went down, Troy's like, okay, who are you going to bet $1 on that gets the bag, right? So I'm like, well, the smart money's on Jimmy Johnson, Justin Thomas's old caddy forever, that left Justin Thomas. He says he's retired, but when this kind of talent comes along, maybe he's unretired, right? And then I go, and then Troy's like, what about Lagava, Tiger's caddy? That would be a good fit. And I go, well, that would be a good fit, but there's no way T-Dub's going to put his graces on that because he's not done playing yet. But it made me think. And then he goes, my dollar's on Joe Scarver, because it didn't look like Ricky was going to make the playoffs at this point. And I'm like, man, I'm going to say something I shouldn't say. And I called him. Joe's been frustrated for 3 years. Ricky's been frustrated for 3 years. And any picture you see of Joe on the golf course with Ricky's bag, his arms are folded right there. Okay, and that's not good caddy body language right there. That means something's up or things aren't going good. So I'm like, oh man, Joe. So when Ben tells me this, I was probably one of the first few people to hear about it. And I heard through the grapevine, I don't know for sure. I heard that it was Joe's. The media's going to tell you Ricky switched caddies, right? The media's going to tell you Dustin fired me in 2011, right? But that's not true. That's not true at all. So I think from pretty good sources that Joe is just, hey man, we had 13 years together. We won 5 times. We won a Players Championship. We had so many chances in majors, and Ricky's been off his game for 3 years. So there's another curveball too, right there.
Well, do you think all of a sudden he hooks up with
Will
at the end of the year?
Well, maybe that's possible now. Maybe Troy was right. Maybe Troy's right because the timing and everything just seems to fit. That's assuming unless Will goes Yahtzee and wins something like that. But that's a situation we have to keep abreast of. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Because I could see that happening because Joe's got a ton of experience out there. You know, he's
And
been
he's
in
a younger guy too.
yeah, he's a younger guy, and that's a big thing for these guys getting a younger guy that they have some things in common. Not that you're talking too much for 5 hours during a pressure packed round or anything, you know. But
Yeah.
well, man, we'll see. But that's an angle. That's the first thing that went through my mind. I'm like, I wonder if Joel's just if they've already pre-planned to hire Joe, and
Oh,
Ricky
that's
just stumbled into the
interesting.
process. I know it's crazy times to be it's crazy times to be a caddy, but I was telling everybody's like, man, I can't believe it. And I'm like, do you think anything surprises me out here anymore with most of these players? You know, nothing really surprises me for just no reason. If you say the wrong thing or it's the wrong club somewhere or a bad wind or something like that. I mean, you could be walking on eggshells at any point. And honestly, it's not a great feeling to have, but it'll sure keep you on your toes as a caddy and make sure you're giving 110% and you're still doing all your work because there's even though I've been over a golf course 15 times or something like that, I'm still doing prep work early in the week. I'm looking for spots that you can miss or you can't miss. Is this green bigger? Is this green shorter? You know, is this wider? I pay attention to grain changes here. I mean, if we didn't get the storm, I was going to predict that it was going to get super fast out here. And a lot of these greens in the back have little down grade pockets that run one way or the other. So, you know, you're always working, right? Because if you're not working, somebody else is outworking you. And it gets back to that, you know, I always use it as motivation. I've said it before, but that Tom Brady ESPN thing talking about his early years when him and the studs were in the locker room and everybody's bailing at 4 o'clock and the big time players are like, where are you going? You know, you ain't leaving. We're not leaving. I'm going to be the last one out of here. And they'd stay there till dark. And it's pretty motivating for a guy like me. It just goes to show you know, hard work gets you a lot of things in life. So, you
It
know,
definitely
we'll
does.
see. We'll see how it
Well,
goes.
I'm not as surprised actually with the whole Ricky Fowler thing
Me
because
either.
obviously
Either.
he's been struggling for years. That's got to be a tough situation,
Yeah, and they're
especially
close, right? They're close.
yeah,
They're like best friends. And you remember my theory? And Ricky's got the new baby at home for the last year, you know, and recently married and that kind of stuff. And I always told you my theory on that was you could
life changer.
nine. Hey man, 9 out of 10 guys they're trying to find their path and they're trying to find their way with a newborn at home and their time on the golf course isn't as much as it used to be. You know, things change. Granted, Ricky's got it. You know, I don't think leave Bryson out of the equation. I don't think anybody's made maybe Tiger too or Phil back, you know, whenever. But Ricky's made a lot of money off course, right? It's got to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and
He's
I
one
don't
of the
know.
most marketable golfers on the
Yeah,
PGA Tour. Even still
yeah,
today, I mean that
yeah.
Puma deal, Puma's not letting him go.
No, Puma's not. Do you know how many shirts he sold for Puma?
Yeah,
He single-handedly put Puma back on the map.
definitely.
They were
And
not a
he's
big
still a
golf
fan
company.
favorite.
Oh, people love him. He walks by and he's just so gracious and he's so classy. You know, he goes out of his way to sign for everybody. He's just a class act. He was raised well. I know his parents. They're from Southern California. I'm always partial to Cali soft, as you guys would say, you know, but they did a great job. They just did a great job with him. He's just he's got a funny sense of humor. He's a joy to be around. But I was a little surprised with him getting in one FedEx Cup event. Why not go? Why not go one more week? Which leads me right back to the Zalatoris angle.
Same deal, right?
Maybe that thing's going down for sure. You know,
Well,
it could.
that's that. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Now the dominoes are starting to fall
Yeah,
because Zalatoris was the first domino to fall, right? Then all of a sudden, everything else starts to take. And your quote there, in terms of that, it wasn't Ricky who did the split, even though the media
mm-hmm.
might be reporting that. It was probably
Right.
Joe because he probably knows, hey, if there's ever going to be a time, it's right
Yeah,
now, and I need to make myself available. Or, like you said, it's already a done deal, and they're just
yeah,
waiting until the end of the playoffs to make it official and so forth. Or
yeah.
maybe even
Well,
after this week, who knows?
I mean, honestly, everything I just said that wouldn't surprise me one bit. I was talking to a caddy that was paired in one of their groups this past week at Greensboro. And it's like, man, it got bad. Like Ricky was, you know, not being Ricky out there, and Joe was not being Joe, clamming up and that kind of stuff. So it's the writing was on the wall. 3 years of him off form after 13 years, you know, and I know he's
Especially
been
the
waiting.
body language that you
Yeah,
were.
the body language. Yeah, with him and Ricky's body language hasn't been great. You know, he was thought for years he was one of the greatest putters I've ever seen. He hasn't been making much. I mean, he went to the Oakley sunglasses, you know, that are actually prescription.
Yep.
So my whole deal is, why do I think Ricky Fowler went off for him? I know he's working with John Tillery, and John Tillery is a great coach, and they've been talking for 2 years. Oh, we're waiting for this stuff to kick in and that kind of stuff. But fucking 2 years is 2 years, right? But as soon as he left Butch, right? As soon as he left Butch, and then he went to Claude, which is like fucking yourself. Excuse my language, but it's 2 steps back to that poser who's acting like he's one of the best coaches in the world. I'm like, man, why I would, if I was like his friend or like super close with him, and I'm close with him. I mean, why wouldn't you just go back to Butch for a little checkup here and there? They all do it, right now.
They all do it. They all do it. I mean, when I was there, Phil came in, even though he was still with Rick Smith, and he flew in for checkups before he ended up coming on full time with Butch. But here's the thing: it's something to where Butch came out after they had split and kind of dished on that entire scenario with Ricky, and he even told the story to where he goes, "Listen, I did one drill with Ricky and he couldn't even hit a golf ball. He was whiffing in his swing." And I feel like anytime you drop that type of information, and there's those egos, right? And Ricky's got to have, I mean, even as good of a dude as Ricky is, everybody has pride. Everybody has a little bit of an ego, especially when you're making millions of dollars and you're doing it in your craft and everything. Like, you pride yourself on that. That's got to be a pretty big deterrent from him admitting, oh gosh, I need you again, and going back to him. So I don't know. That's the only thing that I can think of as you said that was the Butch interview after they split.
Well, and me and you both know this. Butch loves Butch. Butchie loves him some Butchie. Nobody loves Butch more than Butchie loves Butch.
For our podcast listeners, I just tried to take a drink, and Bobby hit me with that. That almost came straight through my nose. We got to be careful on here.
Butchie loves him some Butchie, that's for sure. But I'm sure it'll all work out. I mean,
but for a reason. I mean, Butch is the legend. I mean, there's nobody that has an eye like Butch. Nobody.
And he knows it. He's the greatest teacher, the greatest instructor of all times. And I said before, he keeps it so simple. And what people don't know is he's such a fabulous motivator, right? He is like that football coach or that baseball coach that everybody wants to play for. Yeah, he's a little harsh on you, but he loves you. Yeah, but you need it. You need a little kick in the ass. Go out there and kick some ass, kid. You're so-and-so.
That's the Northeast side to him. Of being up at Wingfoot and his dad being a Wingfoot. And it's that New Yorker side.
You guys are Guidos up there, man. Guidos,
I've been called worse.
So, I don't think there's going to be any more caddy changes going down. I don't.
Gosh, fingers crossed, right? Hopefully this isn't a trend. But all of a sudden before the playoffs.
So the big caddy move now is you have all these guys that lost their card or in their.
Let's jump into that, Bobby.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody surprise you on that list? So I sent Bobby over a list before the show about all the guys who were. Who lost their cards that were a little bit surprising just in general, right? So I think Golf Digest or golf.com came out with an article as to like who surprised them. I wrote up Bobby a list. It was Matt Wallace, Danny Willett, Harry Higgs, Zach Johnson, Rory Sabatini, Charlie Hoffman, Bill Haas, Luke Donald, Brandt Snedeker, and Jimmy Walker. And the one name that surprised me on that list was actually Brandt Snedeker, because it wasn't that long ago that he was playing the best golf of his life. I mean, we're only probably, 3 years removed from that time?
Well, supposedly he's hurt.
Okay. Is he going to get an injury exemption, you think?
What's that?
Is he going to get an injury exemption?
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm just going to tell you, supposedly when guys get hurt towards the end of the year and they're not having a good year, there's plenty of guys who play the bullshit medical card, right?
For sure.
My back hurts, go see a doctor. He's going to write you a note. And all of a sudden you have, status coming back the next year. So I'm not saying Brandt's doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, to be quite honest with you, because I could see him doing something like that. Here's our unfiltered stuff right here, the way you love it, man. And, so no, that doesn't surprise me because he hasn't done shit for a few years. When you think of Brandt Snedeker, you think about like Dustin at Pebble Beach, making burying putts on Poana and being a world-class player. But it's been the elevator's going down for Brandt Snedeker,
It
right?
is,
Danny
and a lot of
Willett,
these guys, it is, right? I mean, Danny
yeah,
Willett had his big moment
that's
winning the
surprising.
Masters. That one was
Yeah, well,
surprising.
no, yeah, that one surprises me because I know Danny and he's a grinder. He's a little bit of a handful to work for. He can get a little sassy and a little feisty. Matt Wallace, I mean, we played with him at 3M. I mean, you want to talk about somebody that's so good at golf, but it's just a miserable SOB. I mean,
Really?
he complains at absolutely everything. We played with him Sunday at 3M, and he has this French guy on the bag, a European Tour caddy that might be the nicest person I've ever. This little Frenchie, everything's so
Really? A
polite.
French guy being a super nice person? That's
No, I
interesting.
know. Who'd have known? I
Except when
thought
I
they were.
went to Paris, everybody was super nice. I don't
No,
know
it's
what
not
everybody's talking about.
anything nice in France. I thought were the macaroons and the crepes. And then all of a sudden I
Yeah.
run into this guy, and he's like, I imitate him sometimes because we played with him in San Antonio when it first came out, and Matt was hitting it all over the planet, like shooting 80, right? And he's like, oh, and he's brought his pencil on his tongue, and he's like, 136 front and 16. It's a 152. It's a little on the left. That's like 9 or 8. And he's like, control 8, holding control 8. And this guy, and Matt's just beating the shit out of him the whole time. But this guy's not done smiling, right? He's going through the whole spiel.
What a
And
dude.
Matt was playing pretty good. The pressure of being in the 125 and 3M. I think he finished 27th, but just like the shit he was saying, like, oh, there's a drivable hole out there on the weekend, 16, right? It's like 282 front or something like that. And Matt was playing great. He's 3 or 4 under. He's probably T12 or T13 at the time, right? Everybody hits driver. Nobody fucking lays up, especially on the Sunday, right? So he gets up there and his caddy's giving him all the info and they're like whispering and talking and everything like that. And he hits one left of the world. He still ended up making birdie, but he hits one left in the world in this bunker and he fucking throws his club up in the air, right? And he's like, hated it. I hated it from the start. Didn't like the play. And I'm looking at Troy and I'm like, it's a fucking 282 front. And you're trying to get your card. What are you going to do? Lay up with an 8-iron out there or something on this back pin? And I'm just like, and then he just continues on 17, and he's yelling at the crowd. And we get to 18, and he goes at 8. He goes after 18 and 2, gets in a bad spot on the bunker. He's got nothing. He can get out there to like 30 feet for birdie or something like that. So, I don't know. People have been in golf tournaments know if one caddy gets hung up in a bunker, if the player's caddy gets hung in a bunker, another caddy would go over and clean the ball and everything like that. And so I'm like, Troy's not around. I don't want him to hear this. I'm thinking on the green, but I'm like, I'm going to say something to this Matt Wallace guy. I don't know why I'm going to say it, but I just like feel sorry for him. So I'm cleaning his ball and I'm like, Matt, he goes, what? I go, you're so fucking good. Chill out, man. You're so good. You're Matt Wallace. I'm like, just go up there and bury this thing. He's like, oh, yeah. And he missed the putt or whatever. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm getting soft in my old age, Like if I was working for Tiger and that story got out, I'd get fucking in a heartbeat. But he didn't surprise me just because of his attitude. Okay, I'm gonna piss a lot of fan favorites off here, but I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of happy Harry Higgs lost his card because he's a miserable son of a bitch out there too.
I knew this one was coming. Here we go, folks.
Because I am not a big fan of these guys. Joel Damon's growing on me because I think he's a good dude. And I lost my dad to cancer, so I have a connection with him and all the battles he's been through. And I super respect him, and he's totally cool and that kind of stuff. But this new age of some of these guys that are, I'm not going to call Joel Damon an average player. He will call himself an average player. I think he's a notch above an average
He's a
player.
humble dude, yeah.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable dude. But some of these guys, like the song and dance that they pulled there on 16 in Scottsdale with Lipping Your Shit Off, it's like, who the fuck are you, man? You're 240 pounds, you're sweaty, button that shit up. You look like a slob out here. You're just an average player. You've never won a golf tournament. Stop strutting around like you're hot shit. And then I saw him do that, that silly season thing with Perez and Harold Varner, just thinking he's hot shit. And I don't know why I'm so bitter in my old age when I see that kind of stuff happen, because you just look for the guys that are just like focused, right? That are trying to win golf tournaments, not the guys that are like,
well, you're a gamer, Bobby.
Yeah,
you understand that, like, this is serious business.
How many followers do I have tonight? How many views or subscribers or whatever the word is for that. So I wasn't surprised at that. I was actually kind of chuckling, and he's always been nice to me. He's got his little brother on the bag, Alex, who's played in numerous USGA events. He's a stud himself. But other than I will say Austin and Dustin, but I mean, fuck, who my 8-year-old could caddy for Dustin, and he would still be Dustin Johnson. So,
I
you
saw
know,
it in the
anytime,
last live event too. The
but
things that you
yeah,
told me, just like
yeah,
I heard some of the conversations going on because they try to
uh,
like get the mics
oh,
close to him and everything,
yeah,
and it's just
yeah.
like, hey, what do you think?
Do you
Yeah,
know?
I
I'm
got
going to
this.
jump forward. Do you know that they pay those caddies are mic'd up? You know that they give them $1,500. You know those Saudis have deep pockets. We're going to get into it. They pay these caddies $1,500 a day to be mic'd up. 1,500 a day. That's $6,000. That's $6,000
Yeah.
right there. To listen to Dumb and Dumber talk about what? You know, I mean, I just what? It's Dustin Johnson. Cut him loose. He's not making. You
Well,
know, he's
that's why
not
they don't
making.
get that much airtime in terms of like the conversations. Like they'll
Yeah,
show
because there's nothing
Dustin
being
hitting a
said.
shot, but like when they actually have like the conversation between them, yeah, what do you think? It's going left
Yeah,
to right? Yep, going left to
yeah,
right. And then Austin will go in and he'll do the whole 4 point.
yeah.
And he's
Uh,
sitting there going through everything, and
yeah.
Dustin's like, "Yeah, I got this." It's like,
Well, the
wait,
thing
what?
is, here's my theory on that. You know, all you guys that don't know, and I might include you in this on that, that say Dustin, and Matt ever said it too. Oh, Dustin Johnson's a great putter. No, he's not. He's an
No,
average putter. I
hang on.
watched
I
him.
said this, and I got criticized for it by I think Matt Every, when he
Yeah,
was
well,
on. I'm
that's
like,
Matt, but Matt's like, oh, he's a
DJ's
great
not a
putter. I
great
go,
putter.
Matt, I stood next to him every day for 6 years. He's an average putter at best that
Yeah.
gets hot. His head falls back. You know, the club face can get open. There were certain drills we would work on. But listen, here's the deal. As soon as they outlined, Dustin relied on those greens books so heavily, right? That as soon as they outlawed those greens books, he's not winning any golf tournaments, right? You can make a case for something else, but and Austin, I played 200 rounds of golf with Austin. He's not a good, he's not a great putter. I mean, he's not a good putter, to tell you the truth. He doesn't really have any feel and touch. So he would do he learned the aim point thing pretty, pretty well. I'm going to say that. I personally can't do it, to tell you the truth, because I'm old school. I look behind the hole, you know, the normal reads. I go all the way around. I
I
pick a
haven't
spot. I'm
bought
looking
into
at
it either. I can't
it's
take that
skill.
much time trying to read a putt.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
not a great
yeah,
putter, but I
yeah,
can read greens, which I
right.
think I've stated on this before that like when I caddy for people, which is now very sparingly, but when I do, I can read putts.
Yeah,
However, when I read a putt for myself, I need
yeah,
somebody else just to give me that validation that I
yes,
made the correct read.
right,
That's my
right.
big thing.
So my thing was he loses the greens, but so their deal was I was paired with him a bunch. Obviously, the Tour Championship at Sungjae when he won the FedEx Cup, and so he's looking at but Dustin's looking at the book. AJ's doing his feet thing, you know, and his fingers and this and that, and AJ points out a spot, and Dustin kind of matches it up, and Dustin was making a lot of points there, a lot of putts there for that year, but you know, it's just one of those things. I mean, I have a theory. I have a theory for everything, and I just don't think that he's that. I never thought he was that great of a putter. If Dustin Johnson was a great putter, he would have won fucking 40
Dude,
times out here.
Bobby,
Mark
he'd be
my
the most
word.
dominant golfer
Yeah,
on the
since Tiger.
planet.
Yeah, since Tiger. So
Yeah, he would
you
have
know,
won so many majors. I mean,
yeah,
his one weakness is really that flat stick. And then,
yeah,
I mean, I hate to say this, but when it came to some of the short game stuff around the greens, like this
yeah,
dude is a ball striker.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, ball strikers are ball strikers. It's
yeah,
rare to get a ball striker that's very good with their short game and vice
yeah.
versa.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'll tell you what, being around him for 6 years, he hits, you notice he never goes up with it. He doesn't have the flop. He doesn't own the flop or the super flop.
Well,
And
it's
I
closed.
don't,
The club face is closed. It's
yeah,
very tough to
there
get
you go.
that
He
up in
can't
the
from
air.
that
Yeah.
position. He can't do that. But he hits these little low checkers that he might be one of the best in the world that I've ever seen it. And it used to freak me out because he would hit these and I'm like, oh, the sound it makes, right? I'm like, oh my God, he boned that over the green. And it's just one or two hops and stops. And I'm like, oh my God, his hand-eye coordination is just so good.
Well,
You know,
Bobby,
that the sound
the
would
thing
freak
is,
me
like,
out.
look at the Masters that he won. It
Yeah.
was the
Oh,
softest conditions
what
with
do
the
you mean? I was
hairiest.
standing next to him. I finished second. My guy finished second. I
Well,
was
you
a
saw
cat.
it firsthand, but I mean,
Yeah.
those soft conditions
Yeah.
allowed you not to have to play anything
Yeah.
high.
Yeah, yeah, but he can't go up with it. He'll tell you he doesn't even try it. he doesn't even try. He
He
doesn't even
knows his
try and go with it.
limitations, and that's
Yeah, he
why,
does.
like, he's at a point in his career, and this is why I'm really glad that he wasn't on that lawsuit. And we'll get to that in a second because
Yeah,
that is going to be a huge topic in the second half of this episode as we dive into
yeah,
the Live lawsuit against the PGA
yeah.
Tour. That look, and it really spurred me because I was very heavily in kind of that pro territory in terms of, like, I was positive on Live Golf. I was giving it the benefit of the
Traitor.
doubt. Yeah,
You're a
no, I
traitor.
was, but I kept telling you, I was like, listen, I want to be on the side of the PGA Tour because that's where all the history, all the legacy, everything is. But at the same time, it's exploited both sides in a bad way.
Mm,
And that's where, like, I feel like a lot of fans have been shifted into the middle, and it's tough because well, we'll get to that, but still sticking on this, guys who lost their PGA Tour card status. I mean, the
I
only
got
other one, just because of you, by the way, that I look
mm,
at that list and go, oh, that's
Sabo,
interesting, is who?
Sabatini, because I work for him for
Yeah.
no. I mean, no surprise. I told you, man. I felt bad because I called when James Hahn was on. I called him a psychopath. I didn't really mean it like that, but he's a little bit of a psychopath, you know. And if people didn't understand what I was saying, that I would caddy for him, but you need to carry a fire extinguisher around with you, is because it's just a pop up blaze from him, and you know. And he was also out for 5, 6, or 7 weeks this year, battling a legit back. Like, he didn't take it at the end of the year.
Mm.
He tried to keep his card for sure. But what people don't know is, just because you lost your card, right? 126 to 150 is a conditional card category.
Yep.
What does that mean? That means 126 to 150 is a different category that's going to play probably anywhere from 12 to 20 events, and they reshuffle every 6 weeks. People that don't know what a reshuffle means, it means it's by FedEx points, basically, is what it is. So 126 is going to get into a lot of tournaments. 126 to 1 mid 130s will get into a lot of tournaments during the fall. A lot of those guys will get into Napa, Jackson, Mississippi, Bermuda. They get into all the off things, and then every 6 weeks, whoever has the most points becomes the new number one, and they stagger down. So you don't hold number 126 the whole time. Can I tell you who I was happy they lost their card? Austin Smotherman, even though he's 126.
Really?
Do you know why? It's
No.
because after my son split with Davis Riley, he picked up Austin Smotherman. They got the last tour card off the Corn Ferry Tour. They started the year at number 50. The Corn Ferry Tour guys also reshuffle every 6 weeks. And, you know, they worked hard together, and they got along great together, and they moved from 50 to 30 after the West Coast. And that is a huge move,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
a big
30
jump,
or better
Bobby.
is going to get you plenty of them. And then and I've said this story before, and then the coach gets it, and then the agent gets involved, who's never had a
Oh,
golfer
that's
before,
right. You and I have
right?
talked about
And
that.
Cam McCormick,
I didn't
maybe,
realize that it was him.
yeah, and he's been through 3 or 4.
And it was
So,
Cam McCormick as the coach, right?
yes, and Cam
Yes,
McCormick's his
yes,
coach,
yes.
and he's got a dude on the bag that works really hard, but he's just like a cheerleader. He's just like a cheerleader kind of guy, you know, that's just a rah cheerleader or whatever. And, you know, everybody's like, oh, poor Austin Smotherman, he made double bogey and that kind of stuff. And I was like, honestly, I'm like, fuck yeah. Nobody moved, you know. It's just like if I would have lost the bag. You don't want anybody to
I'm
I know,
sorry. That shit's funny, Bobby.
I won't have to deal with him till Napa.
Oh, I love it.
So,
All
but
right.
it's my son. I'm protected, so I don't want anybody
Yes.
moving him up. You know.
I completely agree, and I kind of am like, all right, it's time. I know the
Yeah.
audience, they want
Yeah.
to hear the entire Live Golf drama and
What
everything
a
going
day.
on there. And I got a lot of, I got a lot of criticism, but on the same side, I got a lot of positive comments around the take that I took and put out there in between episodes. It was up on Instagram. And Bobby, you were the first one that you're like, you finally have seen what's going on here. And you've
Yeah.
been kind of hyping me
You
up for
stop
weeks.
Will you stop tagging me and all that shit? My phone goes off every 30 seconds. I'm like, God damn
I
it,
didn't
man.
tag you.
Yeah. Well, I'm referencing our boy
Oh,
from
I did actually.
Starfire. Andy, where are you? Andy Patnouse or Patnos? You work with some LPGA guys, and I'm going to talk shit because you were firing at Matt for about 45 minutes, and I kept getting tagged, and my phone was blowing up, and I'm reading this bullshit, Andy. And you told me there was no way the live golfers could lose this and blah blah blah. And I don't know that you do that much, Andy, sitting out there teaching. And I
Well,
made a
and
comment.
what's crazy is, and I'm going to throw in one little dart as well. Starfire
Yeah.
doesn't have a driving range. Okay, it has this
Oh,
tiny little like
Andy.
100-yard little area,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
literally like I love Starfire. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have a driving range. Like the driving range is like 100 yards.
What's his
Like you
last
can't.
name?
I
What's his
don't. I
last name?
don't know. We
Pat
don't need to
Andrews?
get it. We don't need to go
Wait,
there.
no, I gotta go. I gotta go now because on his bio or whatever it says voted one of America's young top teachers, and I'm like, damn, Andy, I googled the shit out of that for 20 minutes. I couldn't find you with the search warrant, bro. What's up with that? But yeah, and
Savage.
yeah, I know. You
I
remember
mean,
when
I was trying. Listen, like the social media team was responding in a lot of ways. It's just they were providing facts, and they're hitting me up, going, "Hey, can you provide us with any type of information?" We had a comment here, and then I jumped in after you jumped in on my personal account, and I'm like, "Listen, I don't think this is the hill you want to die on with these
right?
live golfers."
No,
Because he was trying to play devil's advocate, and I get that, but at the same time, you can't jump into the comments and be so strong and then start insulting when we
yeah,
didn't like for the social media. I went back and looked at it and I'm like, nobody said anything like derogatory or negative to you. They were just responding and like having a good debate. And that's a thing that I think people have absolutely lost in everything that's become social media and polarizing in this country and elsewhere, that it's no longer that you can have a conversation about things. It's now like you and I have had conversations back and forth and we respect each other's opinions
yeah,
and
for
we learn
sure.
from that. And that's how you learn and move in a
Yeah,
direction that is a positive versus kind of coming at people. I mean, he kept saying to the team that you're whiffing. You don't know
yeah,
what the hell you're talking about. It's like, hang on a second. Like they're providing facts, like literal facts as to the fact that the PGA Tour commissioner, based off of the policies and the handbook in which the players designed, okay? The
yes,
players designed this. This is just something that Jay is following, that it is up to the commissioner, whether there's precedent or not, of something that's taken place beforehand, that he so Jay is allowed to decline a release for any
yeah,
reason. There is
yeah,
no guidelines there in terms of it is up to the discretion of the commissioner of the PGA Tour. So whether or not he's approved everything in advance
yeah,
doesn't matter. That will not stand in the
yeah.
court of law.
Right,
In
right.
the policy and in the guidelines, the only way that this becomes something to where Liv will win is if it's antitrust. To where if it's something to where you're literally banning and you hold a monopoly and you no longer allow a competitor to come into the space and you have banned them. So I get that some people are going to argue that side to it.
Yeah,
That's fine. But when it comes to this lawsuit, I just I saw that lawsuit, and Bobby, you'll be the first one to say that I texted you immediately and I was pissed.
yeah. How dare they? Well, they got their ass handed to them today. So I got to tell you, it's been all the talk out here, and everybody's like, what's going to happen, and this and that. And everybody has opinion. What are we going to do? You know, don't talk to them. Put them on their own little corner, and nobody acknowledge them. And it was just going to be very uncomfortable if they played. Because nobody wants them out here
But Bobby, like
anymore.
you told me, there is not a person on tour right now that wanted them to be allowed into
No,
the FedEx Cup
no,
there.
of course not. 100%. Not. There's not one. There's not one. You signed your contract. You're making your money. Go do. As Joel Damon says, go back to the clown show. Or Max Homa said, dreams. I want to earn my dreams. My dreams aren't purchased, or whatever his quote was on something like that. But you see, you know, it was a big day for the PGA Tour today. It was a big day. I can tell you, we played 9 holes early. I was done at 10 o'clock. I'm staying with Micah Scott Piercy's caddy. They played later, so I was like sitting around waiting for the lawsuit. It was hours away or whatever, and I'm like, I'm gonna go shower and change, go back to the golf course and grab some lunch, and see if I could get it on Zoom or whatever. They had it locked till only 500 people could watch it on Zoom, but I was watching the live tweets from like Alan Shipnuck, Fire Pit Collective, and And one of the caddies go, "Oh, they're all every. You can go back in the back in the locker room." And we don't go in the locker room very much. We're just in and out. There's room back there where everybody's watching it. So I walk and I pop my head in. There must have been 80 guys in there. Rory, Ram, all the big boys, all the brass. Like Tyler Dennis, who was like VP, all the PGA Tour reps, the liaisons and everything like that. And I felt very uncomfortable as a caddy. I'm like, oh shit, I'm out of here. And I was just paying attention to the tweets and that kind of stuff. But it was, man, it was a good day. It was a good day for the PGA Tour, as it should have been. Those guys, you can't have you can't have both.
Well,
It's one or the
so
other.
for our listeners, if you want to get a little bit of insight on this as well, at least a little bit behind the scene as to what's going on, because Bobby and I are a little bit privy to this information, but go listen to the Davis Love the Third
Oh,
on that
phenomenal.
podcast. Bobby, name the podcast that Davis Love
So
was on.
it was on Fire Pit. It's on Fire Pit Collective. It's basically Alan Shipnuck, and Michael Bamberger was on it. But if you know much about this Monday, are you familiar with this Ryan guy that does Monday Q Info, the
Yep.
big Twitter guy that's blown up on mini tours and that kind of stuff? He's also a partner. But if you guys get a chance to listen to this, it's the Davis Love podcast. It was last week. And when this Andy Packhouse guy was going at you, remember I texted you? I'm like, man, I just finished this podcast, and I know you listened to it. I know you listened to it right then.
I
think
did,
you
absolutely.
And you're coming from what Davis Love is coming from. Now, Davis Love, I've known forever, and he's the most gentleman. He might be the nicest person I've ever met. He doesn't talk shit about anybody. He's very unopinionated. He just goes about his business. He's chill. He's a giver, not a taker, which is a dying breed out here, And he just puts things in perspective. I mean,
well, he did. And one of the things that I didn't understand before listening to him and then doing some research around it and talking to some people was the fact that this is the strategy of LIV. The strategy of doing litigation and the issue with the fact that the PGA Tour drew the line in the sand that I've been very critical of, especially from the beginning of all this. But it goes back to 2020, folks, to where Jay let the tour know and all the players know, hey, if you go on and join this tour or this invitational or this series, that we are going to ban you indefinitely for life. And this goes back to 2020, pre-COVID.
Are you sure it was pre-COVID when
that's what Davis said. He said it was 2020 when Jay started talking to the guys and telling them pre-COVID that, because that's when if you recall, that's when all of a sudden they threw out the name of Premier Golf League and all these other things, right? And Rory made a comment back then and everything around all of this because he was actually one of the names that was getting thrown around a little bit. And Jay made it very clear that but my big thing that I knew happened and what I heard was when Riv and the Genesis Open, or the Genesis Invitational, right? At Riv, and the players only meeting and bringing everybody in. And Jay really just drew that line in the sand, said, hey, if you're going to go over there, you're never going to play on the PGA Tour again. You're going to be suspended indefinitely and you will be banned. And like that was very clear and it was a deterrent, but at the same time, obviously it caught wind because players in there were going over to LIV. They already knew they were, like, for instance, outside of Mickelson, gosh, you had some other guys on there as well. I'm trying to think of some of the names that would have been playing in the tournament, but also moved over to LIV outside of Phil. I mean, but at that point, Phil was already suspended because, and I didn't realize, by the way, this just leaked last week, that Phil was suspended, not because of his comments, but because he was recruiting players to go over to LIV.
And, and that brings up a good point. Remember I told you when we played with Jason Day in Detroit on Saturday, he said Bryson's been blowing him up every week to come join his team. I wonder if the tour knows about that. And it's happening. It's happening on a daily basis where guys are picking up the phone and trying to recruit other guys, but they got their ass handed to them today. So hopefully, hey, listen, here's the bottom line. The whole Saudi deal, they're trying to destroy the PGA Tour and make it only one tour, make it their tour, really, aren't they? They just want to.
They want the merger. So they're taking Greg Norman's approach, which you dropped last week. He might not be in charge.
No, listen, there's no might not, folks. He's fired. He's done. I went to, I told you. So one of my
so he's fired.
Well, so starting January. Let me back up. Not yet. So January 1st, he's out. Mark King is officially 100% in. He is going to be president CFO. Greg Norman has pissed so many people off, and I'm sure it's part of the Saudis too, that he's getting degraded to chairman emeritus. I'm not sure what that title is, but basically I feel like the Saudis used him for what they needed to get out of him. You know what I mean?
They needed him to recruit players.
He's been lying to everybody. You remember the tweets that just broke between him and Sergio, where Sergio's like, "Man, I don't know," and that kind of stuff. You see the tweet where he's like, "They can't suspend you a day, much less the season."
Exactly. That was complete bullshit.
Yeah, he's been completely lying. So he's out. He's going to be chairman emeritus. If that. Oh, I was telling you. So I went to GSE is a big management company out here. They're huge. They have a New York City office where a Brett there has Bryson DeChambeau, Lexi. He's got a ton of people. Well, Carlos, who works for Sergio Garcia, who gets all the Latinos that come on tour, they bought his company, so he's now with them too. Well, there's another small office that my friend works at, Kevin Canyon, who has Kokrak and a bunch of other average guys. There's a guy in that office, Mike Creasy, who has Abe Answer would be his biggest player. And there's another guy in there, Brett Augustin. So I was running errands in downtown Charleston. I used to go in every week before the kids, but so I'm like, I'm gonna stop in and see what the deal is, see if I can get any scoop. So they were all on huge conference calls, right? And they all had the 1,000 pages of discovery in front of them, and they're just grinding, working the phone. And I'm overhearing these conversations, and I'm like, man, these guys are making a boatload of money right now, right? These agents, right? It's all about the dollar for them. It has nothing to do with the PGA Tour. This is their big hit. So I sit down and I was talking to Kevin and that kind of stuff. So he spilled some information. He spilled some information to me. Like he was like almost sure that the LIV was going to win this lawsuit, right? Well,
really?
Kev was wrong. Yeah, he was almost sure that LIV was going to win.
See, that's a bias right there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I talked to a corporate attorney who is very high up in New York City, actually one of the partners of a big, huge corporate law firm. And I was like, what are the odds that this actually goes through? And he's like, slim to none.
Really? Well, of course, them working for, excuse me, all those
just for the injunction, though. Sorry, just for the injunction to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. The antitrust or the actual full-on lawsuit, that's going to take more time and everything. But yeah,
I said that wrong. I meant the injunction. He was almost 100% sure they were going to win the injunction.
That's unbelievable.
He told me a couple things. It's going to have my fucking boy Pat Perez shitting his pants right now. Two things. You ready for this? So the whole team thing that Perez has been milking the $1.5 million on. So starting January 1st, Dustin is considered the owner of that team, right? Until an owner purchases. They're going to get guys that are going to buy these teams.
That's what I kind of figured. Yep. They become franchises. Yep.
So that $3 million, let's say they win the first event in January. What are they called? The Racers? The Acers, right?
They're called the Aces. Come on, Bobby. Get your LIV Golf together.
It's a fucking exhibition, man. Why would I pay attention to that? So anyways, so he tells me on January 1st, because he doesn't like Perez either. And Perez was with that group with Carlos the Latino, lasted about 3 months, which things usually last about 3 months with Perez. So he says that $3 million actually goes to Dustin. Okay. And Dustin can do whatever he wants with the money. He can cut his players in. He can give himself the majority of the money, or he can spend it on branding and getting sponsors. So fucking Fat Pat keeps shooting these scores and he's done. He's not making that money. You know what else he told me? And did you see the plaintiff's attorney spilled it out in court today that this purse money that these guys have been making is recouped out of their guarantees. So what does that mean to everybody? Fat Pat gets $10 million to go play, right? Fat Pat's already made 1.8. That 1.8 is recouped out of that $10 million. And let me simplify it to put myself in a better mood. Fat Pat got $10 million. After taxes, Fat Pat now has $6 million, right? Fat Pat's made 1.5 off the teams. What do you come up with now? About 4 or 5. And how long is that going to last, Fat Pat? You know,
how long? I mean, they've got a fabulous place over in Silverleaf, and they've done the works to that. They've renovated everything. I mean, there's a lot of bills there.
They got 6 car. They got 6 cars. You know,
I was talking
I'm
with Mikey about that, and it's like, woof, that's a
ooh, they're
lot.
over.
That's a lot of long-term payments you have to make.
And what if this play? And honestly, what if the Saudis they could just wake up one morning and go, "We're done. We're pulling the plug." That's always an option
It's
too. You
always an
know?
op. That was the one thing that always made me nervous because I'm like, listen, Greg Norman is a good businessman. Whether you like him or not, whether
Yeah,
he has a hard on for the PGA Tour and
yeah.
wants to screw them over, he's a
It,
good
it's
businessman
not
at the end of
weather.
the
It's
day.
not
But
weather he has a hard.
I was always fearful that if he gets booted and he gets moved out of his position and
Yeah,
somebody else comes in, but luckily the person that's going to be taking over for him is a solid
is yeah,
executive from TaylorMade previously, and that has helped some other corporations, like you said, like Taco Bell and others, that it's like,
yeah.
all right, Honma, as a club
Well,
manufacturer.
TaylorMade was the big one. He ran
Yeah. I mean, he
TaylorMade
ran it
for.
for a long time. And like, that is, I'm not so scared about that, but just the sight of seeing that this type of movement can happen within leadership that quickly,
Yeah,
that's terrifying because
yeah.
it
Of course it
whose
is.
strategy is it to screw over the PGA Tour and take over the world of golf? If it's the
Right,
Saudis, the PGA Tour is in, and I get why the overreaction and the and reacting based off of fear. In business, you should never react off of fear. And that's one
right.
of the things why I criticized from the very beginning because it felt like a fear based move to come out and draw a line in the sand. But now you've opened yourself up to litigation. Now you have to defend yourself. If you played nice with LIV Golf, guess what? They don't have a leg to stand on. So maybe they were banking on this in order to start to go down this litigation path. But yes, big win for the PGA Tour today. That
Yeah,
was very big. I didn't see it going through because at this juncture, to be able to get a injunction in place and have these players play in the FedEx Cup. I mean, you see it in baseball from time to time with some of these arbitration deals and so forth, or with suspensions, and they put their appeal in, allows them to play up until the decision gets made. But this happened very quickly and in the favor of the PGA Tour. The PGA
yeah.
Tour has felt very confidently since the beginning of even the antitrust of looking into it that they felt very strong about their position. Obviously, this also helps with that in addition to it. But I will say this, if it keeps going down this legal battle, it will be a bad thing for golf in general, which you know with me, Bobby, I have been all about if this grows the game of golf, then it's good. If this is provides a different product to where other people who aren't necessarily your purists and people like us, to where we've been in golf for a long time, we love the way that it is, the way that it's structured, but at the same time, if it brings in this new audience of fans, that would be a good thing as well. But
Yeah.
if the entire motive is to bring down the PGA Tour and to take over that monopoly, so to speak, then that's where it becomes a very negative thing. And that has really spun me in terms of my opinion on everything.
Well, that's the front runner, right? They're just out to sabotage the PGA Tour and take over the whole thing themselves. Like I said before, they've been coming over here for years, spending all their money on our racehorses, on our royally bred $2 and $3 million yearlings to try and win the Derby. They haven't been successful at that, thank goodness. But you know, it's just it's to my own personal opinion is it's a sabotage. You know, they just want to take over the
Well, it's a
whole
hostile
professional.
takeover. We,
It's
we,
a
we see
hostile
it in
takeover.
business whenever a company is publicly traded on the stock market and you can buy up the majority and do a hostile takeover. It happens a lot. And it's just something that you see this and it's like, oh boy.
I think they're. I think everybody here underestimated the deepness of their pockets,
I
too.
didn't, but at
You
the
know?
same time, I didn't, if you're going to sport wash is what a lot of the media critics came out and said initially, and that was a little bit distracting because it's like, listen, if you're going to sports wash, you're not going to do a hostile takeover and put your
Yeah,
name in front of that because like people are going to rebel and it's going to be a very tough look on you, and that's not sport washing, right? It's more so like get into the mix
yeah,
and put your money into it so that no longer like you can end up having a benefit from the sport itself. But this is turning ugly, and it's turning ugly in a hurry, and it's got fans across the board divided, and that sucks because golf hasn't really been that divided other than when we get to a Ryder Cup. Like
Well, yeah,
between
we never.
Europeans and Americans.
This is all new. This is all new to everybody, but everybody's going to be super happy tomorrow out there on Wednesday. I can tell you that much because they're not going to have to deal with the three traders. Because I'm just going to call them. I'm just going to call them traders. You know, the tweets and everything in the comments by Shipnuck about that plaintiff attorney saying you can't take this away from these three kids, and it's like three kids. Matt Jones is fucking 42 years old with three kids. It's just I don't know, man. It was a good day for the PGA Tour because had they lost this thing, morale would not have been good out here this week.
And by the way, let me make a correction here too while we're doing this is that when it first came out, I didn't see that it was just the three that were doing the injunction. I thought it was all 11 that were trying to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs and everything. But the one thing I will point out to all of this is look at the names that weren't on there. You don't have Dustin Johnson. You don't have Brooks Koepka. You don't have Paul Casey. You don't have Lee Westwood.
Yeah, those guys know something. Them and their management company knew to stay away from this one. But I will.
LIV pushed this. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like if you are in the audience and listening to this, there is no doubt. You have to stop being naive to the fact that this was pushed by Norman and LIV Golf. Like they were pushing and campaigning because they want to put the pressure on the PGA Tour. These guys were used as somewhat pawns in order just to start the litigation.
Well, do you know what I found out with that meeting with Kevin too was even though these were the only three on this TRO, had LIV won, that was going to open up the door for the other guys because they're all considered under the same umbrella. Like Abe Answer and Jason Kokrak would have been able to play this week if they wanted to. Kevin Canning, Kokrak's manager, told me. Anybody that was on that lawsuit, that's on the lawsuit, would have been able to play because when I was in that office, Kevin was talking to Kevin just finished talking to Kokrak, and he was telling Jason, he's like, "Hey man, if they win this thing, you're going to be able to play the FedEx Cup." And Jason, being Jason that he is, I love him to death. Jason's like, "Man, I don't even know if I want to play." Like Jason's like, "Why would I want to go?" Yeah, why would I go want to play? I mean, Jason's getting his money and he's cashing out his chips, and there's bigger things on the horizon for Jason Kokrak. He wants to be a dad, and he wants to spend time at home and make as much money as he possibly can. And I understand that. I don't know if I'd say I'd respect that, and I think Dustin's the same way.
Here's the thing, though. We don't have to, right? We don't know what they're going through and why they made the decision that they did, which is why, by the way, I've been very pro to these guys, or very positive in light to these guys who have made the decision to go over there because that's their right. They're an independent contractor. They're fine to go over. And I think the sentiment, and we heard it from James Hahn, that a lot of guys on tour are fine with them going over to LIV Golf. They don't have an issue with that. Like, there's not that divide when it comes to, hey, you decided you're going to take these millions of dollars, go for it. Like, good for you for being able to have that opportunity and going to do that, but don't try to have your cake and eat it too and come back, sue us, and then all of a sudden try to get into our tournaments.
You know what's funny? You know what baffles me when people call them independent contractors? So they're independent contractors with full paid health insurance and
retirement.
Is that an independent contractor? Because I'm an independent contractor.
It's usually not.
I pay my own insurance.
They are technically
no retirement.
It's interesting because it kind of is a quasi thing that most business people here in the U.S. don't really understand because it's not an easy thing to accomplish in the HR world. Like I had time working for one of the biggest human resources companies and payroll companies in ADP, and they literally I couldn't imagine how the PGA Tour has this structured, but they have a full retirement plan.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking with Mikey about this as well, Pat's brother, and literally he was informing me about how the retirement is set up on the PGA Tour based off of things that he's been told by his brother. And it's like, holy cow, guys have almost a pension, right? It's a
Yeah,
pension is
it
what
is a
it
pension.
is with
It
these
is a
guys. Yeah, no, like the actual technical term, I'm stretching myself back about 18 years back to when I was in finance. But that being said, like they have health insurance, they have the pension plan that they get put into that literally as long as they have tenure, they're going to get that pension and they're going to be paid out for life unless they do something like this. And that's the part that I'm like, hang on a second, is that really a 1099? And it's really not. It's not an independent contractor when you go down that path. But the way everything else is set up, yes, it is as a 1099.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna back up a second
Yeah,
because
do.
we're talking about some guys out here that had no problem with guys going and that kind of stuff. They understood their decisions and to take the money and sail off into the sunset, so to speak. The guys that they have problems with are the guys like Perez or Reed or something like that, who just flat out lied and said, the PGA Tour is the greatest thing on the earth, and then all of a sudden this money gets thrown at them, and everything changes, right? It's the guys that lied about playing less golf or growing the game or what have you. I was sitting at breakfast yesterday morning with a caddy, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he's could be called the greatest caddy of all, one of the greatest caddies of all time. He is one of the greatest caddies of all time. And Perez's name came up, and this guy was friends with Perez, and he told me, he goes, "How old do you think he is now?" And I go, 44, 45, 46, something like that. He goes, "That motherfucker." He goes, "Here's what I hope happens to him after all the bullshit and all the lies and I've gone on record saying what a backstabber he is because he's a notorious backstabber, and the fans don't know the things that we know about him.
Yeah.
And I could give, and maybe one night I'm going to give you a bunch of backstories on Perez, and maybe I won't. But this famous caddy, super famous caddy, said, "You know what I hope happens to him? I hope this LIV thing buckles in 2 or 3 years, and I hope he's fucked himself from playing on the Champions Tour because he doesn't deserve to play on the Champions Tour if this thing goes belly up, and he can just live on his pension. But a guy like Perez is probably going to get, he's made so many cuts. I'm just throwing a number out there, but he's probably getting $50,000 a month for the rest of his life once he retires. Because I don't think that can be taken
It
away.
was.
And is that
according
even
to
a
his
break
brother,
even?
it was a large amount that
Yeah.
he was going to receive, and he's not going to be able to touch that now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not educated on that. I'm more educated on the thoughts of everybody, on
Well,
tour.
actually, that's a good point, Bobby, because I don't know legality wise if his tenure with the tour ends
Yeah.
up leading to
They
him
can't
still.
take that away. I'm pretty
You
sure
don't
they
think
can't
so?
take that away. No, I don't think so, because if you're going with rules and regulations, right, which is a big thing for the tour, rules and regulations, if you've made so many cuts
Yeah,
or
that's a
whatever,
good
you're
point,
entitled to
Bobby.
that pension. So that would be
It's based
great
off of his past, not his future. Yeah, yeah.
So a big win. So to summarize on the whole thing, a big win for the PGA Tour for sure. Obviously it's not over and that kind of stuff, and there's new names going. We all know who they are.
Oh, Bobby, let's talk about this for a second, because you and I had to keep our mouths shut, right? Yeah. We've had to stay quiet, and then this poor guy. I say poor because he got caught up in the moment. He played well, tied or T8 at Wyndham. I don't know why I was hesitating there. I was thinking 3M, and it was Wyndham. So with that, he ends up talking to the media and dropping all of this about Cam Smith and Mark Leishman.
Yeah. Well, remember a couple episode or two back, I told you there's an Aussie team that's going to be formed. So now we know, and we've known for a while that Cam Smith and Mark Leishman are going. It's not like we can publicize it or anything like that. But the gentleman we're talking about is obviously Cameron Percy. So when we were playing in prep, Troy's best friend out here is Robert Streb, and his caddy is Australian. His name, we call him Catman. His name is Steve Catlin. So we were like on the second green. He goes, "Do you hear what Cam Percy said on this?" It wasn't media. I don't think it was media there at Greensboro. I actually think he was. It wasn't. No, it was an Australian radio show
You're right. And he probably didn't think that it was going to catch fire.
So he just dropped it. He just said, "Hey, man, it's a done
Yeah.
it's a done deal. You know, it's a done deal. Did you see Cam Smith's press conference
Oh
today?
my God, the poor
Holy
dude.
shit! They poor dude. I mean, you know, that's what the media is paid. You know, I don't like the media either, but you know, they're entitled to ask their questions, and
Oh, absolutely.
they
And
just
here's
came
the thing. I mean, Cam's
raw.
been thrusted into this not by his own like having information like this.
Yeah,
It's very difficult for people that are not in front of the media to understand that the media is going to set traps. And I don't even know if it was because I haven't heard the interview that Cameron Piercy did, but
yeah.
by him
First,
dropping that,
yeah, yeah,
whew,
I know. So the big thing now, the big question is we know those two are going, right. It's kind of getting well known that Hideki's probably going to go. You know, I don't know that for sure. I know his caddy Shoto pretty well, his translator. I'm good friends with Bob, an older gentleman that's been with him for years. I will tell you that everybody's talking about Adam Scott going. I know Adam Scott's not going. He has no interest in going whatsoever. That's just somebody just throwing names out there. Excuse me. I know Cantlay's not going.
well, I said Adam Scott before anybody went over to live, just
Yeah,
because like Adam Scott, he's a surfer, he likes
yeah.
his life, he likes being over in Australia, and it's like, why not allow like if you're Adam Scott, and I position it this way that like if you're Adam Scott, why wouldn't you go? But
Yeah,
Adam
yeah,
Scott, I didn't realize that with him in particular he still wants to win majors and he
yeah,
still wants to compete on the
yes,
tour. And
yes.
that was surprising to me to see that he didn't jump ship and he has not shown any interest.
No, he has no interest whatsoever, and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars already. What's you
Well,
know
he's the
he's worth
sexiest golfer alive. Sorry,
well,
KH.
it's official. Sorry, KH Lee,
Yeah.
but you know he is officially the sexiest golfer alive.
I
I mean,
mean, you show his picture to a female.
well, I live with one, so I'll tell you a funny
Yeah,
story.
actually, I do know this
2000, I was working for Siwoo. 2017 President's Cup when the internationals got throttled was you have all these team meetings and everything, and the spouses can come and the families and that kind of stuff. It's like an intro, you know, have dinner together and that kind of stuff. And a caddy out here, the caddy form Clarkey was, I guess they went into town into NYC. It was at Liberty National. They went into NYC a day or two early and got after a little bit, had some drinks and that kind of stuff. So we're sitting at the same table with Adam, right? And he's got his head down, and you could tell that he's probably a little bit hungover, and he's like this, right? And my Lori's had a thing. My Lori met him in Hartford. He got in the elevator when we got in the elevator when me and Lori first. We were in the elevator. He comes in, and Lori's much younger than me, and was one of the first tournaments she went to. And she's like, "Oh, Adam Scott." And he comes in the elevator, and he's all nice. I introduce him, and she's just like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Man, I'm getting laid tonight for sure." Because
you know,
she's just
he's just getting worked up.
And all her teachers that she worked with, every woman loves Adam Scott. But my funny story is he's like this. He's like, I don't even want to be in this meeting. I've been in 15 of these things and that kind of stuff. And Lori's sitting next to me, and he's like this. His like eyes are halfway open, and I see her phone go like this, right? And I'm fucking kicking her, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" You know? And she's snapping pictures of Scotty like that. Scotty pops his head up, and he goes, "Lori, at least you could have asked me to smile." Something like that, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, Lori, why would you do that? And she's just all giggling. But anyways, getting back to these players. So somebody, oh, I'll tell you what it was. So what are they called? What's Dustin's team called? The Acers?
Aces.
Why don't I say Acers? Because they're a bunch of Acers. So apparently they have their own Twitter account. I stumbled onto it this morning. Yeah, check it out. And
come on. Can we start adding them?
Yeah. But I don't know if somebody with Liv's running it, or I don't know if one of
it's got to be Liv. It has to be.
Or it could be one of Paulina's best friends that's running it, you know, because Dustin has done that before where he doesn't pay attention to social media.
That could be.
But they listed like 10 names, you know, like 10 names. And Leishman and Cam Smith, Hideki, okay, you can see they're going. But now they're back to Xander, you know, and they're on Berger. And I talked to Berger personally about a month ago before he got hurt. And I'm like, for sure they came after you, right, bud? And he's like, yeah, they did. And I go, man, they had to throw some coin at you. And he goes, man, it wasn't even close, right? And I'm like fucking Perez money. And he's like, not much more than that. And I'm like, wow, you know, Daniel Berger is Pat's had a long extended career,
And
but an average guy.
Berger's
But
still in his prime and could
Burger's
get
Burger,
even
yeah,
better.
he's Burger, but Burger's Burger. So I'm just like going to myself. I'm like, how do they just lie and throw these names out? They put Xander back up. They put who else did they put up?
It's
They put up
just
Yako. They put up Yako Neiman, and
really.
I could maybe see that only because he is also connected to Carlos with GSE, who had all the Latinos go. So that could be a possibility. But none of these guys are making a move out until after the President's Cup. That's for sure. I would bet
Well, poor
everything.
Cam. Cam's got to deal with all this media
Yeah.
attention and pressure. It's not attention; it's pressure at this point.
Yeah.
And it's negative pressure. It's not good
Yeah.
pressure. And
Yeah.
literally, I don't know how he's going to handle this. He's a
Yeah.
pretty chill guy, and
Yeah.
he's laid back. But man, this could get to anybody, and to constantly have to answer these questions when now the media knows. And that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why you and I did not come out with it in the first place, because we're like, we made the decision as to not coming out with it and not stating anything, because we're like, man, it's Cam Smith. This dude is awesome. We
Yeah, he's
love
cool.
Cam Smith.
He's
Like,
a cool dude.
super cool dude, just like laid back, and like if he wants to go over because he wants the money and the lifestyle and everything, then go for it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, like, man, I can't fault him, but I can't sit here and go, we should be super critical of this dude. And then on top of that, he just won the Open Championship and the 150th Open Championship, so that makes it tough. But let's get into the really that last part to LIV Golf, which is, are you surprised that, I mean, some of these guys have already made that decision, already signed contracts and so forth, just waiting for the season to get over with, the President's Cup and so forth. But are you surprised by these guys going over still?
Well, yeah, honestly, I'm surprised that Cam is going to go over because he's in the prime of his career. He's made it well known that he doesn't play golf for the money. He wins to, he plays to win championships and that kind of stuff. But let me just say this, getting back to that agent thing. His agent is a guy named Bud Martin, who doesn't have, he's not well liked by caddies. Let's put it that way. This Bud Martin guy. There's stories about him, so to speak. He also has Matt Wolf too. But imagine if you're a player and you're on the fence, man, damned if I do, damned if I don't. But if Cam Smith is getting $100 million, and these agents, Matt, I found out, are getting full boat. They're getting their 20%. And your agent is up for $20 million. Which way do you think this agent is going to push you?
Oh, he's going to push you right into that.
If it's a tiebreaker, that agent is, and that's what I love what Matt Every said. These agents don't have to wear the scarlet letter, and they don't have to deal with the shame or being seen or this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? They're sitting at their desk and they're negotiating and closing their deals. And I know they're trying to make their money, but these are hits these agents have never seen before in their life, man. It's unbelievable.
The Scott Boras effect. You know, San Diego, baby.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, brother. You are. You got
one on your team that's the laziest guy in baseball.
Oh my God, Manny Machado, why, man? Can you just run out a ground ball once?
Or how about when the ball goes off your glove? How about you run after it?
Man, we're in a wild card race right now, Padres. We're a half game up, we're a half game down, we're one up, we're one down, and Manny's out there cherry picking. This is what happens when you get a primetime athlete making $100 million a year that thinks he's,
No, but here's the thing, though. I'm going to defend that because athletes don't. If you make that money, and you still have that competitive spirit to win. You got Michael Jordan, you got LeBron James, you got these other guys. They're going to do everything within their power, and that money only helps them build a team, make sure that they're healthy, make sure that they're in the best condition ever. I hate that. I'm sorry, Bobby, because I do. That one hits me because of my time around Major League Baseball players and just seeing how hard guys work, even though they have $100 million contracts and so forth. I'm watching the Jeter documentary right now on ESPN, and that thing just reminds me, like, I love Jordan. Like, my role models were Jordan, it was Jeter, and then you got guys, I mean, the Knicks, I didn't really have a whole lot work off of. But Jeter and Jordan were my two big idols growing up. And those two guys, while they were different, they were very much the same. And they were super competitive in the right way to where
And why
they wanted to win.
why
They had
is
the will to win.
why isn't Manny Machado then? You're talking about the majority. I'm just singling out Manny Machado.
But he's the minority when it comes to the guys that are just super
Yeah.
lazy. He's a
Yeah.
guy who's just super talented, and I can tell you right now, he probably doesn't love baseball that much. He probably doesn't care about winning that much. He's
That's
more of a
obvious.
like, yeah, it really is
Yeah.
obvious, and it's sad, but at the same time, it's like, I don't buy into that argument that, hey, if you pay these guys guaranteed money, which I've said from the beginning, I think the PGA Tour should. I think there's a lot of things that LIV Golf was going to do that was going to make the PGA Tour better long term. But man, if that mission is just to keep milking the PGA Tour for every cent they have in legal battles and everything, PGA Tour can't compete. They can't compete with the amount of money that the Saudis have, because that's a limitless amount of money that they have and a limitless amount of power. I mean, we've got our president going over there fist pumping with those guys. That is not the scenario that the PGA Tour wants to fight against, which again goes back to my initial point around the fact that every reaction, all the things that the PGA Tour has done, and guess what? It has leaked and really created an environment. And Davis Love touched upon this. He goes, it makes us look greedy. Makes us look like greedy bastards that Jay's making so much money that he would be second on the money list, that we've got guys in terms of being paid endless amounts of money that aren't being in tournaments and so forth. I mean, even last year, Tiger made $8 million even though he didn't compete in many events because of obviously he was out for the majority of the year. So you got a lot of this stuff that's coming up, and it's like, it does kind of put a black eye on golf in general, but that sucks because you and I, we want to grow the sport. We want the sport to be in this great light, and it makes it tough for us to do our jobs. But at the same time, it's like, this is the world that we live in. This is the environment that we're given. And at the end of the day, I want our audience to know that no matter how you feel, whether it be heavily towards the PGA Tour or heavily towards LIV Golf, we want you to tune in and listen because we're going to shoot it straight.
Oh, yeah. That's our deal.
We're not going to, this is an unfiltered podcast. We're going to share our opinions. And at the end of the day, if it's one side or the other, we don't care. It's going to be where we're going to share with you. And obviously, you're going to get opinions that are neutral, but at the same time, we're not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Like, we're not sugarcoating it around Cam Smith heading over to LIV Golf. Like, we like Cam. Like, we think
everybody like
for him, go for it. But at the same time, make sure you know what you're getting into, and don't let these agents pressure you into the fact that you have to understand your agent might seem like your best friend, that they have everything going for you, that they're setting everything up for you, they're going to take care of you. There has been numerous times in sports to where not only agents but financial advisors and so forth have taken advantage of athletes.
Oh yeah.
Don't allow that to take place to where all of a sudden you lose every piece of dignity, respect, and so forth. So this is my warning to anybody entertaining the idea of going over and not vetting it through entirely and being pushed by your agent. Be careful, because as Bobby has reiterated and Every said it on a couple episodes ago, Bobby's saying it now, I'm saying it now, your agent does not need to wear that scarlet letter, and do understand how much money you're making your agent versus what they would have made if you don't go over.
Right. That's a good way to wrap it up. I got a good early pro-am tee time. I do want to give a shout out to everybody.
Watch out, fans.
I used to do the hit and runs, but this one I want to say a special good luck to my son Daniel, who's on the Corn Ferry Tour, who caddies for Pearson Coody. If you know much about Pearson Coody, he was another #1 college player coming out this year. Won his won his second tournament on the third tournament, I believe, on the Korn Ferry Tour. He's 29th on the money list. This is the last week where 25 guys get a card before the playoffs, and they got a great opportunity. They had a good chance last week, ended up finishing 10th, but for some reason I'm emotional, and I just want to tell Daniel how much I love him and how proud I am of him, and good luck to him and Pearson. And Matt,
That's awesome, Bobby.
thanks for another one, man.
Hey, my pleasure, and good luck out there on the Korn Ferry Tour. Let's go. Daniel, get out there and make it happen. Oh,
thanks,
gosh, Bobby, my pleasure. Thank you, my man. And
okay,
everybody, until next week.
We'll see you, buddy. Bye.
Bye now. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more information.